Hey guys, welcome to Let's Talk, the show where we talk music and we talk sports. Today, again, it's just going to be the two-man show. JG9 and I are here. And before I bring him on, I want to remind everyone, check out the QR code on the screen for Circle. It is a great hydration system that I believe in and has over 100 great flavors. And if you don't want to take my word for it, just know that Mr. Beast is actually using this product now and working with Circle to create new flavors for everybody. Um, let's kind of break down some of these rules. Um, Yahoo did a wonderful spread or layout of these new rules, and we'll go through them real quick. Let's start with kickoffs are radically changing. Now, we saw this last year in the XFL, which you broadcast some great streams there. This is 100% to reduce injury, correct?
Well, it's not necessarily to reduce injury because they were reducing injury last year. It's to reduce injury and get the kickoff to mean something again, to not have it just go out the back of the end zone. Because they reduced injury last year, but the problem is that the kickoff sucked. You have 13 kicks in the Super Bowl. None of them got returned. I think 78% of kicks got taken for a touchback. It was boring. The kickoff was basically just this not fluke play, but like this play where if you got returned, it was crazy. And it went out to the 25. Now at least we're seeing an actual kickoff with return and with stakes and everything.
Now, someone posted that this kickoff scheme is ripe for misuse by the kicking team. The rules kind of prevent that, correct? And that it has to go into that landing zone.
It has to go into the 20-yard line. So I'm not sure how you could misuse that.
Right. Because you're kicking it.
I don't know. Like, I think it has to. If it bounces short, I know in the XFL, if it bounced short, it didn't didn't count.
Yeah.
It was a penalty. So I don't know if this means the squib kick is gone. I'm assuming the squib kick is gone. But surprise onside kick's definitely gone. The squib kick, I don't know if anything changes with the squib kick. That's a viable strategy. I have no problem with teams using. But it's going to look radically different. But I have no problem with this rule. I think the only confusion I have is why did the UFL change the rule to make it NFL style?
Yeah. Now the UFL is doing more of what the USFL did last season, right?
Okay. Yeah, kickoffs at the 20-yard line, so they all get returned. But I get why they had to get rid of the kickoff in the way that it was, because it was there was concussion that happened on 6% of plays the data showed, I forget what season it was, but 6% of concussions came on plays, like just a general play, but 13% came on kickoffs.
Yeah.
So it was an unsafe
play. Of course, Yahoo using your favorite analyst to bash on here.
It's funny with Schefter. It's funny too, because it's like I've never criticized him reporting stuff. It's fun. Like I've always
stuff he just gets wrong.
Yeah, when he reports something, it's on the money. Like if he says this is happening, I'm putting money on it that it's happening.
Right.
It's more of just when he talks about non-news and non-reports.
It's those opinion pieces.
Yeah. It's more of when he has to add additional context where it's like, ooh, this is not right.
So the kickoffs they're further back and they have to go, and there's a landing zone, that a preferred spot where the NFL would like those balls to land. Yes. How long before you see them pushing this back? To maybe kicking from the goal line, because these kickers are getting so good.
Yeah, I mean, we've reached the limit in terms of how far these kickers can kick off a tee. I feel like we've reached that limit. There's less incentive to kick out of the back of the end zone. But you saw these kickers, when they're kicking out of the back of the end zone, they were kicking into the stands. So I feel like we've reached the point. I don't think it's going to get moved any further back.
Yeah.
My only thing is that I'm not sure how much of a difference this might make, because touchbacks are at the 30-yard line instead of the 25. I'm not sure if that 5-yard difference is worth the giant return, because we saw in the USFL with all these kickoff returns, or UFL I should say, with all these kick returns, that And granted, they were kicking from the 20, different rules, but these teams are starting these drives at the 40-yard line. It might be worth it for these teams to just still boot it out of the back of the end zone. Now, if it was at the 35-yard line, like they were talking about, but they got rid of that. It was supposed to be 35, and then
They compromised.
to get more people to vote on it. So that's not as punitive if you go out of the back of the end zone.
Because the 35, you might as well just kick it out of bounds and give it to them
Yeah.
at the 40, right?
Yeah. I think what we could see eventually, we could see a scenario where if this doesn't work out, we go 35-yard line on touchbacks, but 50-yard line if it goes out of bounds. I could see that as a scenario at some point in the future. But when people say the NFL wants to increase scoring, I think this is definitely a way to do it. Your average field position is going to go up just by default.
Yeah. And you're going to reduce the safety, the safeties and other things like that when it comes to the defense or a kickoff getting pinned deep, and then the defense capitalizing with a safety. You're going to see more of that with punts, which we already see. Punts are usually the leading cause of safeties on the ensuing drive. But I like the idea that the kickoffs are going to actually be a legitimate play instead of, like you've said, a glorified ceremonial switch who has the ball.
Yeah. I think just the concern I have is I'm not sure this is necessarily enough. Like, I like this rule change. I like that they're trying to do something. But you think of the average drive, probably about 20 yards, I'd say. Probably the average drive is 20 yards, give or take. So kick it out of the end zone for a touchback. All right, 30-yard line. You got 20 yards. They're at midfield.
50.
They're still not kicking a field goal. They're still not punting. They're still not kicking a field goal. They're still not going for it. They're going to punt the ball.
Unless you've got a Tucker or a Bates.
Right. Even that, you're not trying to 68-yarder unless it's like the end of the game.
Right.
So,
exactly.
I'm not sure. I think there's going to be some tweaks to this. Basically, this is here to stay. I just don't think this will be the final form. I think this rule is going to look different next year.
They're going to tweak this over the next couple of years to get exactly what they want.
Yeah, they'll do trial and error. Which is why I'm a bit surprised they didn't do it where they implemented this for the preseason, and then for the regular season, they went back to the old rules, and then they would submit like a final proposal for 2025.
Or do it for the preseason, then make a final decision on that week before regular season starts.
Yeah. Because I still think you're going to get teams booting out of the end zone. But at the very least, we're not going to get 78% of kickoffs being touchbacks.
If we're seeing it now, if we go into preseason and everyone's just kicking it right out of the end zone, could the NFL tweak it to push the kickoff back 5 yards?
They could. I mean, the problem is that we won't know with preseason. That's the real issue, because kickers are not going to boot out of the back of the end zone in preseason. Because one of the things you want to look at in camp and in preseason is special teams, because that's how a lot of these guys make the roster. 53-man roster, you figure about 45 of those spots are locked up, guaranteed.
That kicker position is not always locked up.
Right. Kicking's not locked up, and special teams is where a lot of these guys, like the undrafted free agents, the lower round rookies, they make the roster that way. They make it.
And is there kind of a gentleman's agreement that preseason you're actually wanting those special teams plays, so a kicker won't just boot it out of the end zone?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's gentleman's agreement so much as it is the coaches wanting film on the players. Like there's nothing to evaluate. Like you want to see how a guy takes a good angle. You want to see how a guy gets up a block. You want to see how a guy makes a tackle on special teams. There's nothing really to evaluate. Like if the guy's just kicking out of the back of the end zone, like I look exactly. If you're just kicking out of the back of the end zone, I look exactly the same as as everybody. I do exactly as much as those guys. You're just kicking out of the back of the end zone
because you're just jogging down the field.
just run down the field and you just don't do anything, and like you don't touch anyone, you don't tackle anyone, you don't get off any blocks because you're just out of the back of the end zone. Play means nothing. So I think it's more of just you want things on film. It's almost like why teams will not go for it on fourth down in preseason a lot of the times. They'll kick the field goal because you go for on fourth down, what are you going to learn? Like the third string
Right.
quarterback, what are you going to learn? Like, because these guys are making
Right.
it based on their play on offense, making it based on play on special teams. The more special teams reps you get, the better.
Yeah. This one has been kind of the hot topic of what came out of competition committee. We're going to kind of gloss over it real quick, but hip drop tackles now 100% in the referee's hands. Not something we really needed them to be worried about, right?
No, I mean, here's the thing: if it was robot officials, I'd be like, okay, like I get it. They're higher risk of injury. Like I get it. Want to get rid of it? Want to coach you have a game? How are these refs going to officiate this? They can't officiate as it is.
Right.
Like we don't know what intentional grounding is. We don't know what a catch is. We don't know
what a sack is.
Yeah, we don't know
versus
anything
roughing the passer.
Yeah, so like, how are we going to officiate what looks like a regular tackle? They showed the film. I have no clue what a hip drop tackle is. Some of those look totally fine. I know there's like a textbook definition, but I think the way to get this out of the game, you can't expect the refs to call this in real time. They have enough on their plate as it is. You want them to figure out, okay, what happens on a hip drop tackle? Like, you want them to
and this is all to and this was a rule that was put into place to protect receivers, correct?
Just receivers, running backs, really anyone. But it's just gonna be tough to officiate. That's really what it comes down to. I don't have a problem getting rid of the hip drop tackle if it reduces injuries. It's more of these officials will not be able to officiate it. I think the way to do this is you almost like how they enforce guys throwing the ball into the stands, where you have the play, it doesn't get flagged, but you get fined after the fact.
Right. Kind of like a uniform policy, kind of like the NFL does with uniform policies of they'll photograph a uniform violation and then you get a letter in the mail saying, hey, you owe us money.
Yep. Because like everything's now we have to figure out if a tackle is legal or not. Like it just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. And especially because I could see guys, you know how like in the NBA, when guys think they're going to get fouled, they contort their body in a way to make it look like they got fouled even though they didn't get fouled.
Yeah.
I could see some savvy NFL players doing that, where they contort their body in a way to make it look like a hip drop tackle when it's not. And the ref will call in real time.
But I could be wrong. Did the league put in some safeguards to the so-called flopping problem that could create?
It'd be more of just how they land. Like they can just, because obviously like you want to stay upright at all times. Obviously, like the goal is like NBA, you want to go down. So there's no real flopping in that regard in the NFL, because obviously if you can stay on your feet, the better it is. But it's more of, if I know I'm going to get tackled from behind, I'm going to prepare for it. I'm going to contort my body in a way where I can safeguard myself, I can protect myself, but it looks worse than it actually is.
Right. So NFL decides the trade deadline needs to be week 9, not week 8.
Fine with me.
Obviously, this is in preparation to going to an 18-week or a 18-game season.
Yep. And it's also because by week 9, you have a better idea of where you stand. Like back in the day, the trade deadline was week 6. You didn't know if you were contending or pretending at that point. By week 9, you know whether you should buy or sell. So means a more active trade deadline. We've seen more active trade deadlines in the past. I think we'll get even more active this year.
Yeah. Coaches are going to get a third challenge as long as one of the first 2 was successful.
Love it. Love it.
Do you think the NFL will ever go to the super challenge that the UFL has?
I don't think the Referees Association would allow for it to happen. I don't think they would allow for it to happen. I think it's a great rule. I like the super challenge, but I don't think it's going to happen. But I do like this rule. I know some people are thinking, okay, what about just you get 2 unsuccessful challenges? Why bring the third challenge? A lot of the rules are brought in because of circumstance, and we've never had a situation in the challenge rule came in place in 1998. We've never had a situation where a team won all 3 challenges and then needed to challenge something the 4th time. No team's ever won 3 challenges. So this makes sense. I think the impetus for this was the Bills-Steelers playoff game where the Bills all spoiled their challenges in the first quarter. So I like
Yeah.
this change a lot.
Now you're gonna have to explain this next one. Enforcement of fouls on change of possession plays. This one, I've read through what NFL has published on this. I've read through the synopsis of it. I'm still kind of like, okay, so both teams commit a foul and it's fourth down, then what really happens?
Yeah, basically, if there's a penalty, like let's say there's a offside penalty and there's an offensive roughing penalty. Let's say there's a late hit by the offensive player, something like that.
Right.
Now, let's say the offensive team throws an interception or something. The defensive team recovers, they have the ball. If they accept the penalty beforehand, you wouldn't accept the penalty, you just decline the penalty because it would be it would still be the other team's ball.
It would
But
be an
now,
offsetting penalty.
yeah, but now you can accept because offsetting penalties, the thing is that they offset, but there's some things that are weighted more than others. There's some things that don't offset with each other. I don't think
Right.
this is ever going to come into play. This might come into play once a season, but it makes sense. It's basically you can't if you commit a roughness penalty and you come and you turn the ball over, that will be added on to the yard line.
The end of the play.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's confusing wording. It's not going to come up. I'd be very surprised if it comes up.
It's going to come up once a year, and everyone's going to be scratching their heads when it happens.
It'll come in a Lions primetime game. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, just another way for the refs to screw the Lions.
Yeah.
As Grossi likes to say. Replay changes coming. Now I'm surprised that this one actually got past the refs, because this throws a big monkey wrench in their whole "our word is final" thing. Now you got a replay assistant that actually can call down and say, wait, we're reversing your call.
Yeah. I mean, we had some of that last year with expedited review. I guess it's just we're expanding what expedited review is.
Okay.
I'm just skeptical that it's going to look as good as it is because referees don't like being corrected. They don't like being corrected at all. Remember when they had the challenges for pass interference? And even if it was blatantly obvious, very rarely did pass interference get overturned. Very rarely did a team win their challenge for pass interference.
Right. I mean, it would have had to be a saint. Basically, they said that experiment was they weren't going to overturn anything unless it was as blatant as that playoff game.
Yeah, there was and there were some things that were, but they never did it.
Right.
I guess this is really just expanding what expedited review could do for objective things. So
the intentional
black and white.
Yeah, the intentional grounding and roughing the passer. Obviously, roughing the passer is the big one. We've seen some very loose terms, if that's used for that. I mean, Brady gets slapped on the chest and it's a roughing the passer call. And then Stroud took a hit this last year that got put full body weight on him and didn't get called. So, yeah. I mean, obviously the refs seem to have their own definition of this.
Yeah.
If they've got 16 guys that's their whole job of looking for this scenario, maybe they can start getting it right.
Maybe. I have a feeling based on clear and obvious, objectively incorrect stuff, I have a feeling it's going to lean more toward the offense than the defense. I have a feeling we're not going to see too many overturns for driving in the body or anything like that. But I have a feeling we might be seeing some stuff where the referee might have missed a late hit and they call it afterwards.
Yeah.
I feel like you're going to see more automatic first downs than you will see reversals.
Right. The next one, this is just pulling guys off of IR in the playoffs.
Yeah, nothing really too crazy there. Just you have more roster flexibility in the playoffs.
Ironic of who proposed that one. And emergency quarterbacks. This one we kind of knew was coming. A third quarterback to be classified as an emergency quarterback. No big surprise with that one, right?
No, because a lot of teams, like the whole point of the third quarterback was to prevent a Niners Eagles situation with Josh Johnson with that.
Right.
But last year, not a lot of teams used that because the third quarterback was on the practice squad and you had to waste a roster spot. Now you don't have to waste a roster spot, which is good. I think a lot of teams are going to change their draft strategy now and undrafted free agents because, like a team like Jacksonville or Cincinnati, I think is a great example. Cincinnati beforehand, probably not the best destination to go to because you have Joe Burrow and Jake Browning. You're not going to make the roster, obviously. But now you were a quarterback, you go to Cincinnati, like an undrafted rookie. That's a very enticing spot now because
or the Browns where they play where they freaking have 5 quarterbacks needed.
This is gonna play an all quarterback roster.
Yeah.
all quarterbacks everywhere.
Do you see the use of? I mean, we've seen punters have to be quarterbacks. We've seen kickers have to be quarterbacks in the past. This kind of eliminates that need, right?
This eliminates that need. Yes, something catastrophic would have to happen for that.
Like, all your quarterbacks go down in one game.
3 of them go down.
Yeah,
3 of them go down. At that point, just Jesus take the wheel. At that point, I don't even know. I'm a bit surprised that they're not putting in an emergency specialist rule. I would do that if I was commissioner. I would lobby for an emergency specialist rule because
specialist as in punter, kicker, or
kicker.
Well, return
kicker
guys. Return guys, you can pretty much put anyone back.
Oh no, not return guys. No, not return guys. I'm talking.
Kicker. You're talking kicker, punter.
Like the Panthers last year in the game against the Jaguars, they had no kicker.
Right.
Because he got hurt in pregame warmups. The Texans last year on Gubawale. I mean, that was a crazy story. That was a crazy kick.
Yeah.
That was incredible to watch. But for every Gubawale moment, you have a lot of moments where teams are completely screwed because their kicker gets injured during warmups.
Right. So possibly that may be the next step of emergency specialist.
Yeah. And I don't know I don't know if I would do that.
Quarterback and kicker and punter kind of does. You can't really just put anybody in that spot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, O-line, D-line, you can move those guys around. You can move receivers around. A receiver can play as a safety, whatever, if need be. But those 3 specialized positions are very specialized, and you can't really afford to not have them.
Right. It's those positions where there's 1 or 2 of them, and there's no one else that can do it.
And most teams aren't going to keep 2 kickers and 2 punters on their roster.
No,
unless it's on practice squad.
I can't remember the last time a team. I think the Colts were the last one to keep 2 kickers because they had a kickoff specialist. I think they were, and that was like a decade ago. I think they were the last one to keep 2 on the active roster, like at all times.
Yeah. So those are the rule changes that the NFL has agreed on with all the owners. Now, when you've covered this, the owners have to have a 2/3 majority to make rule changes, but the commission, the competition committee, individual teams, and the refs association, they can all make recommendations to the owners, correct?
Yep.
So we didn't see anything come out of the referees this year. We didn't see anything come out of the players union this year. Most of this stuff was competition committee. Does that surprise you?
Usually it's a good mix between competition committee and teams. I feel like next year it's going to be more teams than competition committee. Because I think the big one for competition committee this year was we got to do something about kickoffs. We got to do something.
Kickoffs and hip drop tackles seem to be the 2 that they pushed hard.
Yeah, we need to make plays more exciting and we need to reduce injuries.
Yeah.
I think next year we'll see more team-based stuff.
One that I'm glad didn't pass, the Eagles proposed that 10th of a second clock after in the last minute. Are you glad this one didn't pass as well?
It was one of the dumbest rule proposals I've seen. I'm so glad it didn't pass.
There's always one dumb one, right? There's always one dumb.
Yeah, I'm like, why? Like, it doesn't make any difference. There's no difference between 4.2 and 4.1. It's not like basketball where like there's actually a difference in tenths of a second. It's
Right.
going to make the clock more confusing because we'll have to review more stuff with the clock. And it's going to cost some money for a lot of these teams that don't have tenths of a second programmed in their scoreboard.
Yeah.
And a lot of these teams are getting new stadiums. So it's like we're going to spend money to renovate the scoreboard for something that we're going to get rid of in 2 years. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Let's talk about the Hall of Fame game, only because I have a major interest in it now.
Yeah.
Bears and Texans. This didn't surprise you, did it?
Not at all. Hall of Fame is always based on who makes the Hall of Fame. And the Bears were sending 3 guys in. They were
And
sending
the Texans were sending their first
real one. Yeah, I mean Ed Reed technically, but
yeah.
Usually they would send if you haven't played in a while, and the Texans haven't played in 20 years. I thought maybe there might have been some talk of let's do the Panthers because this is one of their first. They didn't play the Hall of Fame when Sam Mills got in. This is like their first lifer with Julius Peppers. Let's do them, do Bears Panthers. But my guess is that the Texans, they knew, okay, we're going to get a lot of people coming up from Houston for this. A lot of Texans fans because it's their first one.
And Texans fans travel well.
Yeah. And they're not going to get a Hall of Famer for a while after this. Not counting J.J. Watt. But J.J. Watt, my guess is that year they're just doing Patriots Bucks because he's going in with Tom Brady. Right. So they probably thought ahead and were like, you know what? Tom Brady's going in. We'll do Patriots Bucks for that. Texans are probably not going to be here for a while besides J.J. Watt. Like, I can't think of anyone that's even like remotely close. Maybe Hopkins, but that's
that. I was going to say Hopkins could get it, but
5 years down the road, maybe.
I mean, I look at Hopkins and say, if he would have been able to play, compare Hopkins to Irving.
Mm-hmm.
If like Irving played with the same quarterback for pretty much his entire career.
Yeah.
Hopkins has played with what, 10 different quarterbacks?
Not a lot of them very good. Not a lot of them being very good.
And he's still put up the numbers that he's put up.
Yeah.
So if you were to give him, say, if he could have put up the numbers over his entire career that he put up that one season with Watson, he would be first ballot talk already, wouldn't he?
Yeah, probably. It's sort of just a giant logjam at wide receiver. So I don't know if Hopkins getting. I mean, Torrey Holt retired in 2009 as one of the greatest of all time. He's still not in.
Still not in.
So Hopkins is going to have to wait a long time. So basically, that's like with the Texans. This is their only chance to play in the Hall of Fame for the next quarter century. And they haven't played.
Of course, they got to play when they were the expansion team.
Yeah,
because the NFL likes doing that.
Yep, they always do that, which is nice. I like that. But this makes a lot of sense. I speculated Bears Texans for a while, and this doesn't shock me at all.
In another game that has been announced, well, partially announced. We're not big fans of where it's being broadcast, but the very first game of the season, regular season, is going to be in Brazil. But why Peacock?
Money. 120 million reasons why. 120 million reasons why.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, that's I just hope that no streaming service gets exclusives for the Christmas games.
I don't think I would hope not. And I don't think they will, because I think the NFL realizes that on Christmas
you've got to be on a major network.
You have to be, because there's nothing else to show. And on top of that, a lot of people spend Christmas with their grandparents.
Right.
A lot of people spend at their grandparents' homes. They probably don't have smart TVs. So you just lost a giant chunk of audience. It's a bit different with games on like Prime on Thursday nights. It's not like you can go to the bar and watch, because the bars are closed on Christmas. So you're stuck.
So yeah, and obviously as the year, within the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see that kind of changing, because our parents, I'm in my 40s. My parents are now grandparents, and my grandparents are no longer around. So my mom hosts Christmas.
Mhm.
Well, every TV in their house is smart TV.
Yeah.
But obviously that's going to change in, that concept is going to change. But rural America is really where it's going to be. Hey, we can't get these games because we're stuck with satellite internet or we're stuck with dial up still.
Yeah, I think once we get like added infrastructure to get internet like high speed internet across the country, like Google, if Google Fiber expands and whatnot, like that's really like people that have Google Fiber love it. Like if that expands, like that's a game changer. But there's still that technological divide that we're
Right.
getting better, but we're not bridging that just yet. Like I know, like my parents, like my dad always asked me, like, how do I change the TV from HDMI to the other one, from HDMI one to HDMI two, and he says so this is on HDM 14. How do I change it to HDM 13? I'm like, no, it's HDMI 4. You have to change it to HDMI 3. So
He sees the eye as a one.
yeah.
Nice.